Hello and welcome to Grognard's Solo Gaming. I am the Grognard and today we are continuing with Tales from Barovia. This will, however, not be a direct continuation of the previous episode, as that is not how this series works. But, like last time, I'm continuing with the SoloRPG challenge that was created by Lekkis last year, and his channel is going to be linked below. And this time the challenge is to use an indie system or resource, and I have chosen That's Novel by Matthew over at Grey Army Gaming. And his channel as well as the rules are also going to be linked below. That's Novel is a solo RPG engine that is a complete rules-light system for playing using a book of any kind, and whatever genre is chosen for the book, it's going to generate an adventure in that same genre. So I'm naturally going to be using the Curse of Strahd book that contains the adventure. In short, what you do is to use a simple tool, like the one shown on the screen, to get random snippets of text, and those snippets then serve as prompts to inspire the game. But there is also a rules system for hit points, weapons, armor, level, and difficulties. And in a nutshell, you get numbers by counting the letters in randomly selected words, and then you add or subtract between 1 and 5, depending on gear and level. Finally, there is also a yes-no oracle, dependent on whether the random word has an even or uneven number of letters, and also variations of and or but, depending on the number of letters. For more details, I highly recommend Matthew's video going through the rules, and that video is also going to be linked below. I decided the character was going to be a human monk of Sathramelin named Hans Bauer. For this adventure, he is a level 2 character with martial arts type dodging equal to medium armor, and martial arts type attacks equal to blunt weapons in damage, meaning he gets a +2 to all checks and damage inflicted, and he subtracts 2 from damage received, and he has 20 hit points. And again, the base number is the number of letters in whatever word is randomized with the tool. About monks of Sathramelin, their title within the church is exorcists, the same way that rogues are called witch hunters, and they wear the same type of clothes as witch hunters, making the two groups only distinguishable from the fact that exorcists don't wear armor. So, how is this game going to affect the main campaign? The number one thing is that Hans is going to be a possible character replacement if he survives and someone in the main party dies. Apart from that, nothing is decided ahead of time, and I don't know what is going to happen, so we'll just have to see. This episode is going to use the normal story format, but then there are going to be pauses where I talk about the That's Novel gameplay and the prompts. And then at the end of the video I will talk a little about the game, the challenge and the session. And that's it, so let's get started. Captain Dymler, Corporal Hertz, anyone? Hello? Hans has called out so many times his throat is getting hoarse, but there has been no reply. The fog is still thick and quiet. How is this possible? He and 7 of his fellow exorcists had been marching along with the rest of their unit. They had secured the Asimai from the abbey after a short skirmish that dispersed the Circanthian mercenaries that were camped outside. Then the fog floated in, and from how sudden and unnaturally thick it was, everyone had assumed it was a spell and that an ambush was imminent. The captain had ordered them to gather around him and to create defensive circles around the Asimar woman, but then the fog swallowed everything, and they were all lost in its grey nothingness. And that must have been when something strange happened. Hans had not moved, but the sound of his comrades had just grown fainter and fainter, as if he or they had been moved by magic. And that was when he had called out for the first time, and it was probably hours ago by now. The fog had since varied in thickness, and he had been able to ascertain that he was among grass-covered hills and rocks and boulders of varying sizes. As Hans climbs a hill, he finds that the fog ebbs. Excited at the prospect of potentially spotting some kind of landmark, he begins to climb a sizable boulder, half buried in the top of the hill. So here I am doing a skill check, and the difficulty level is going to be 6, and then I am getting a random word, and I get weapon, having 6 letters And that means a success even before I add his +2 for his level. So he climbs the boulder. Thanks to his rigorous training in hand-to-hand combat, Hans' fingers are strong and tough enough to hold on to the damp rock, and he soon finds himself on top of the boulder. Hans slowly turns in every direction and looks out into the misty landscape. So now I am going to use the tool again, and this time to get a random prompt from the adventure. And the prompt is angelic form hoping that. So I am going to add something that has the form of an angel. At first he sees nothing, but then the mist temporarily withdraws, and what looks like an enormous statue of an angel becomes visible in the distance. With a new sense of hope, Hans climbs down the boulder and begins making his way towards the statue. Now I'm wondering if anything happens on the way, so I'll use the oracle to get a yes or no answer. So, does anything happen on the way? And the word is fill, which is an even number of letters, and that means yes. And it is a 4-letter word, meaning it is just a yes with no and or but. Okay, so then I'm getting a prompt for what it is that is happening, and the tool gives me 2 descending stairs should. And to be honest, I'm not doing anything crazy with this prompt, but I'll just have the character reach some stairs and then I'll see if they lead to a building of some sort. After a few minutes of moving over more low hills covered in grass, the ground flattens into a man-made road of cobblestone. Or that is what Hans guesses it is, as the fog has grown thicker yet again, and his vision is limited to only a few feet. In fact, even the tall statue of the angel has been swallowed by the grey and the gloom, despite the exorcist having gotten closer. Hoping he has not lost his bearings, Hans carefully continues in the direction of the place where he last saw the statue. As there isn't much to look at except the ground, the exorcist avoids falling when the cobblestone suddenly turns into a set of stairs leading down. Happy to see more man-made architecture, the exorcist walks down the stairs, and as he reaches the bottom, the fog temporarily retreats once again, revealing... Right, so now I am going to get another prompt to find out what is revealed. I'm going to say the statue of the angel, but there might also be a house or several houses. So the first question is there a house near the statue? And the word is circle, which is even, meaning yes, and 6 letters, meaning it gets bumped up to a yes and. So I will use the tool one more time, and the number of letters in the word I get is going to be the number of buildings, and the word is the, meaning 3 letters and 3 houses. So the exorcist walks down the stairs, and as he reaches the bottom, the fog temporarily retreats once again, revealing the statue of the angel standing in a square surrounded by 3 houses. Hans is struck by how strange the behavior of the fog is. Previously it seemed to ebb and flow steadily, like the waves of an ocean of vapor. But now the exorcist feels as if it has withdrawn almost intentionally, just enough to show him this square and these houses. It is, of course, not impossible that there is some kind of magic at work, but he is not an expert in spells that control the weather. But it could perhaps be the work of a druid of some sort. Feeling a bit uneasy, Hans decides against calling out, despite hoping that the houses mean there are people around. It's completely impossible to tell which direction is north. The only things that exist are the stairs, the statue, and the 3 houses. What is this place? Right, so I'm going to start by getting a prompt, but if it doesn't work for some reason, I'll ask a few yes or no questions instead of trying another prompt. And the prompt is... The entrance is a small table. So I am going to use the words the entrance is small, and I'm going to say that is because the house is made for halflings, gnomes, or possibly dwarves. And then I want to know if all 3 houses are like that. And the word I get is though, which is even, meaning yes, and with 6 letters again it becomes a yes and. So not only are they small, they have round doors, grassy rooftops and small gardens in front of their entrances, making it clear to most people that these are halfling houses. However, there are no halflings in Agremini, so Hans will not be able to draw that conclusion. The statue of the angel looks familiar enough. Even though he has never seen this particular one, Hans easily recognizes it as one of the many angels of Sathramelin. And upon closer inspection he can see a symbol of his god, a sun, on the angel's shield. Surely that has to be a good sign. If whoever lives here worships the one true god, then he can expect to receive all the assistance he needs. Feeling a little better, Hans turns his attention to the buildings that are a bit peculiar, as they are clearly too small to have been constructed with humans in mind. But the exorcist doesn't know what race builds houses like these. Could it be dwarves? No, he's pretty sure they have always lived underground, even before the wars. He remembers reading about extinct races in the church's history books, but it was so long ago he cannot remember their names. Could some of them have survived here, in this strange fog, perhaps specifically because of the fog? Could it be some kind of magical protection? It was certainly possible, and if that was true, and the church had fought the inhabitants in the past, were they enemies? But then, who built the statue of the angel, and why? Hans can't really make sense of the situation, but he takes off his medallion of Sathramelin and places it in his pocket, just to be on the safe side. Despite the undeniable charm of the buildings, there is still something unsettling about the houses. Everything looks pristine, clean and well cared for. The grass in the gardens has been cut, and there are vegetables and herbs growing. And yet the place feels completely dead. It's literally as quiet and still as a grave. There are no birds chirping, and not even the wind can be heard. Meanwhile, the fog adds a kind of pressure, at least to Hans' mind, and looking at it for more than a few seconds makes him claustrophobic. As soon as the thought has entered his mind, the fog immediately starts to flow again, creeping in between the houses. In a minute or two, it is going to have swallowed the houses and the statue once again. And even though he's not keen on the idea of entering one of the houses, Hans would still rather be inside than outside under the circumstances. And despite the state of everything around him, he's somehow still convinced that no one lives here, that if he enters one of the houses, he's going to find it empty. The house on his right-hand side is the closest one, so he nimbly jumps the fence and makes his way past a few rows of tomatoes and something with green leaves that might be lettuce. Reaching the door, Hans fights the urge to knock and simply tries the door handle. The door is unlocked and he crouches down and slips inside. So, what does he find inside? At this point, as someone trying Matthew's game That's Novel, I want to try the combat system, meaning I'm going to simply decide there's something to fight in here. But what? I will use the tool to get a random prompt to see if it works out, and if it doesn't, I'll just come up with something. Let's see, the prompt is: catacombs contain the moldy. Well, that does work actually, at least one word does, so let's continue. Hans quietly closes the round door behind himself as he looks around. He finds himself in a vestibule that opens up into rounded corridors in 3 directions. The floor, walls and ceiling are all made of sturdy wood, and whoever made them was clearly a skilled craftsman. There is a neatness and tidiness to everything, but it's still apparent someone lives here, or has lived here. There are children-sized clothes on the hanger by the door. The wax candles on the table in the other end of the room have melted from being lit at some point, and there are dirty boots for small feet standing next to the hanger. But despite all these details that seem to indicate people, Hans cannot shake the feeling of death that seems to permeate the whole area, including the inside of the house he has just entered. Perhaps it is the fog discoloring and muting the light, making everything seem pale and faintly blue-gray. And the stillness and quiet certainly do their part as well. Keeping his head down, the exorcist starts to move deeper into the house. Halfway down the corridor, there are 2 doors, one to the left and one to the right. Hans considers opening one of them, but then a strange smell reaches his nostrils. It's faint but unpleasant, reminding him of spoiled food. Looking ahead in the corridor, he thinks it leads to a kitchen, though the lack of light is making it difficult to see. Moving slowly to keep as quiet as he can, Hans ignores the doors and follows the corridor. Luckily, the wooden floor is sturdy and well made and doesn't creak under his feet. As the corridor ends, it opens up into what is indeed a kitchen. Like the rest of the house, it is clean and tidy, but the foul smell has grown stronger. Because of the thickening fog outside, it's getting darker and darker inside the house, and Hans strains his eyes looking for anything out of the ordinary in the kitchen. Pots, pans, jars, boxes, knives, herbs and spices. Just things you would expect in a well-stocked kitchen. But then, what is that? There's something small lying on the floor. Is that a person? From the size, it would have to be a child. Person or not, the thing on the floor is completely still and silent. So after watching it carefully for several seconds, Hans moves closer. The thing, which looks like a dead child, unsurprisingly turns out to be the source of the odor. As a soldier in Sathramellin's army, the exorcist has smelled death more times than he cares to remember. But this is somehow different. On closer inspection, what looks like a child to Hans turns out to be covered in patches of mold or fungus. The body on the floor suddenly inhales and twitches. The exorcist takes a quick step backwards and draws his short sword, as the thing, which is clearly not a human child, but some kind of creature, opens its eyes and stands up. Hans is not going to hesitate. He is going to lunge forward and slash at the creature. So, for combat in that novel, you use a skill versus skill type of resolution in combat. And we already know Hans has a +2 to skills, attacks, evasion and damage. And I'm going to say that this small creature has a +1 to all those things. And that it has 10 hit points, making it roughly the equivalent of a level 1 character. And making the exorcist the stronger combatant in this fight. I'm also going to give the initiative to my character, as the creature has just become conscious and it has to get up off the floor. So let's get a word for the attack, and that word is dusty. For 5 letters +2 for his level gives the attack a value of 7. And then a word for the creature's attempt to evade, and the word is hags for 4 letters +1 for its level, meaning 5, and meaning Hans' attack hits, and the damage is... The word is terrify for 6 letters, but in this game damage is capped at 5, so that is what it's going to be, but then we add the weapon damage of +2, even if a sword is technically +3, for a total of 7. And the creature has no armor, meaning Hans brutally slashes its left arm off and cuts into its chest. He notices that its body is sort of spongy and that the bones must be quite soft. Also, the creature doesn't seem to feel much pain, as it snarls more than it cries out, and it doesn't seem particularly bothered by the loss of its arm. So then we move on to the creature's attack, and it gets the word 2. Which is quite unlucky for the creature, as it just gets a total of 3 after adding its level. And for his evasion, Hans gets the word makers for 6 letters and a total of 8, meaning he easily takes a step back while keeping his sword between himself and the creature. And he is going to use his enemy's momentum to his advantage, and he's going to lunge once again, and he is going to try to skewer the creature and end the fight. A word for the attack, the, for 3 letters +2 for his level, totaling 5 against the evasion attempt. That gets the word off. The creature apparently cannot catch a break and gets only 2 letters for a total evasion score of 3, leaving it no choice but to get impaled on the exorcist's blade, as it has 3 hit points remaining, and that is the minimum damage. The creature's eyes grow wide as the exorcist's short sword pierces its chest, and some vile liquid that must be the equivalent of blood spews out from its mouth. Once it has fallen to the floor and the kitchen is still and quiet again, Hans can hear sounds from other parts of the house, and he guesses there are more creatures awakening. Though the creature wasn't much of a match for him, he still doesn't want to face several like it at the same time. Also, from its appearance and stench, he wonders if it carries some kind of disease or similar. Deciding that it is time to get out as soon as possible, Hans looks for a back door. So then I am asking the Oracle, is there a back door in the kitchen? And the word is area. And an even number means yes, and 4 letters mean it's a simple yes. Hans exits the house and is relieved to be able to stand up straight again. Though he is reluctant to abandon the only landmark he has found so far, he still feels as if though he will be better off in the wilderness than here, if all the houses contain these creatures, whatever they are. As an exorcist, Hans has knowledge of the undead, and his guess is that the thing he killed was some sort of a ghoul. Alright, so Hans is intending to leave this area, but let's get one more prompt to see what happens as he comes out of the house. And the prompt is Fiona or her offspring, because, which is very interesting as these are NPCs that have been mentioned in the Curse of Strahd series, but that the party has not met yet. But luckily this can make a lot of sense. Just as Hans is about to leave, he can hear a man's voice say something from around the corner. The voice sounds completely normal, and the exorcist didn't get the impression the ghoul-like thing could speak at all, so he moves towards the sound, while trying to be as quiet as possible. As he peeks around the corner, he can see 2 human-sized silhouettes standing behind the statue of the angel. Because of the fog, it's impossible to see any details, but it seems to be 2 human males speaking in the common tongue. From his new location, Hans can hear what they are saying, and he remains hidden and listens. One of them says, "This is clearly not it. I suggest we head back." The other replies, "Sure, but what kind of people build houses like these? Dwarves live under mountains, don't they? So, is it halflings or gnomes?" Who cares? I can't even remember which of them has pointy ears. I just remember that's how you're supposed to tell them apart. Aren't you even a little curious? It's not often we come across something like this. You're right, this is quite detailed, but we're most likely going to run into aberrants if we stick around. True. Okay, let's go. The 2 silhouettes start to head for the stairs past the statue, and instinctively Hans calls out, "Hey!" worried he's going to lose the strangers in the mist if he tries to follow them from a distance. The men stop. "Who goes there?" "My name is Hans Bauer. I'm an exorcist in the army of Sathramelin. I'm armed, but I mean you no harm." "Very well. We are adventurers. Our names are Karl and Nikolai Wachter. We are also armed, but you're welcome to approach." Hans holds his hands up, showing his palms in a gesture of non-hostility. Karl and Nikolai do the same thing, and as the exorcist gets closer, he can see the 2 men are dressed in leather armor and cloaks, and they both carry backpacks, swords, and daggers. Hans walks up to the men. "I hail from Lutz, and I was heading back there when I was separated from my unit by this strange fog." "Unfortunately, the fog is magical, and you're no longer anywhere near this Lutz. We are from a town called Vallaki, in the land of Barovia, and we're heading back there now, if you want to come along." "Thank you. I guess my top priority right now is to get out of the fog, so I'd be happy to accompany you to Vallaki." There is a muffled crash from inside one of the houses, and Hans says, "There are some strange ghoul-like creatures in the houses. We should probably leave before they come outside." "Good idea. Come on, this way." The 3 men walk up the stairs and disappear into the fog. And that is where we are going to leave the story this time. And that means Hans Bauer might be in Vallaki, if or when the party gets there. Also, he might have some information on the Wachter family, or at least the brothers, Karl and Nikolai. And perhaps he can learn what it is they are looking for in the fog, because apparently there are mysterious things going on in the fog, and it seems it is not immediately or always deadly, as has been suggested to the party by Ismark. Now for a few words about that novel. Overall, I think it's a great system, and getting prompts from a book is a playstyle I really enjoy, so I would highly recommend the game to anyone who's interested in solo gaming. It's quick to learn and easy to remember as the rules fit on 2 pages, and all you need is a pen, paper, the tool and a book. So it's very quick and easy to get started. So a big thank you to Matthew for creating and sharing the game. Concerning the SoloRPG challenge, it's always nice to look for something new. Of course, the challenge was simply to use an indie system or resource, but I also wanted to do something that would be new for the channel, and I appreciate a challenge that ends up showcasing products from indie developers. So, as always, a big thank you to Lekkis for creating the challenge. For the next episode of Tales from Barovia, the challenge is going to be to use a minimalist system, and I already know what that is going to be, but I won't give it away just yet, though I do think it's going to be fire, so I'm looking forward to it. And that's it for this time, so I thank you very much for watching or listening, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.